Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. Bit of an extra video here. I figured I'd do another mock draft and sort of do our first one in June and just sort of see how things go. I haven't done a mock draft yet for you guys where I'm picking from the last spot in the draft. So this is going to be a PPR mock draft. I'm doing it on the ESPN platform. I'm picking from pick 12, so it'll be really fun to see how that shakes out. It's always fun sort of looking at what you end up with drafting at these turns just because there's some very crazy wait times in between picks, and it's fun to sort of see how things shake out there. So. Also, always fun to look and see how the ADPs vary. Most of the videos I'm putting together are just based off of the Fantasy Pros composite ADP. Obviously, we're going to get very different ADPs looking at that compared to what we're going to see on ESPN. For example, here you're seeing Brees Hall going to pick 2 as to where his ADP right now is actually closer to pick 8 on Fantasy Pros. So just a lot of variations there. It's fun to sort of take a look at that. I'll do some videos later on highlighting the discrepancies and ADPs, sort of telling you guys what values there are on different platforms because that's always a lot of fun too. But definitely fun to do these mock drafts and just sort of see how things shake out, practice building different rosters and see what happens. So it'll be a lot of fun. I got a couple questions earlier as well asking about when auction content would start. I'll start putting out some auction content probably within a week or two. I fail every single time to mute that before the video, so my apologies. I will get it eventually. But let's get going here. So we saw Christian McCaffrey here go at pick number 1. I expect things to go pretty chalk here early on, although I do generally see CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek go ahead of the second running back. But ADP's king here. Whatever platform you're on, people are certainly going to tend towards that. So we saw Brees Hall go at pick 2, and I don't have any problem with that pick as well. I think it's more than reasonable to pick Brees Hall at pick 2 if you want to. I think there's a pretty clear top 5 for me. Amon-Ra wouldn't have been a clear top 5 pick for me, but he's a great player as well. But getting Bijan at pick 6 here is going to be really great for the person picking at pick 6, so good for them. Taking a look at what we're going to be looking at here at pick 12. We're probably looking at Jahmyr Gibbs and a receiver here. Looking at the wide receivers available, I'm really not in love with any of them necessarily. I do like A.J. Brown quite a bit, but I don't think he's got the same ceiling as some of the higher tier guys. So it'd be really great if maybe 2 of these running backs could slip. If I can get Jahmyr Gibbs and Kyron, or Jahmyr Gibbs and Saquon, or Jahmyr Gibbs and Taylor. So we did just see A.J. Brown go. We're probably going to get 2 of these running backs here, and that's probably how I'm going to start. Just like there's other players I do really love. Like I love James Cook quite a bit, but I'm not going to take him here at pick 13, and I'm not going to get him back there. So I think we're looking at probably taking 2 running backs and then building out the wide receivers here. Although I do generally find in like normal ADPs, at least on Fantasy Pros, it's more beneficial to maybe tend towards the wide receivers early on because of how running backs are just sort of shifting back later. We're not really seeing that so much on this draft here, so I'm pretty happy with how this shook out. We're going to get Jahmyr Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor. Um, really just rock solid running back 1 and 2 there. And I'll feel super confident going into the season if those 2 guys end up being my guys, because I think both those guys can be top 5 running backs this season. But now we've got a long wait here. We're looking at picking not until pick 36 now, so it's obviously going to be quite some time. That's obviously the downside of picking here at the turn. So we're going to see a lot of guys go off the board. It's obviously going to suck quite a bit, but if we sort of start just looking ahead to what we're going to be looking at, we're probably not taking a running back the entire rest of the next 5 rounds. If you take a running back in round 1 and round 2, I think it's generally a bad idea to take a third unless it's just a crazy good value, at least for the next several rounds. You don't want to put yourself in a spot where you're just desperately in need of another position and you've got good running backs on your bench. Obviously, we can flex a third running back here, but it's just a little suboptimal to be doing that. So looking at the receivers available, I love Marvin Harrison Jr. this season. I think he's going to be an absolute monster. I have no qualms about making him my wide receiver 1. Malik Neighbors, I think, is actually a really great value on ESPN right now. His ADP is in like the mid 20s, according to Fantasy Pros, and that's what we'll see in like Best Ball and stuff right now. But he's currently going around pick 50 right now. That makes him a really great value on ESPN. I know a lot of you guys probably aren't doing like high stakes, legitimate drafts on ESPN right now, but if you are, I would definitely be targeting Malik Neighbors. He's one of my favorite values. Devon Achane, we see at pick 43 here. I've talked a lot about Achane being one of the worst values right now because his ADP is in the second round, but if he's going in the 4th round, I've got no problem there. I think that's a perfectly fine pick. So all of the advice we're giving here is obviously going to be based off of ADP and just sort of seeing how things change. And ADPs across platforms are going to be very different. They do generally sort of stabilize as we get closer and closer to draft season because more drafts happen on each platform. So I would expect a lot of this to balance out a lot of the discrepancies, but just sort of fun to see where they're at and see what happens there. So we're almost through round two here. We saw Olave and Kamara go. Kamara at the end of round two is a little too rich for me. There's a lot of running backs going after him that I like way more. I like ETN more, James Cook more, White more, Jacobs more. A lot of running backs that I prefer for sure. So I don't think I would have taken Kamara here in round two, but I think he's a great like round four pick. Rashad White, that's a good pick. ETN's obviously going to be a top 10 running back again this season. They've talked a little bit about how they want to use a second running back this season more than they did last year, mentioning Tank Bigsby again, and I think it's possible. I think they want to do that, but Tank Bigsby was just not good enough to justify actually putting him on the field. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that again this season, so I still think the floor is super high for Travis Etienne, and obviously the ceiling is another top 3 finish. Mike Evans in round 3, got no problem with that. Just a little bit early for me, but I don't hate it. Drake London here going in round 3. I talked a lot about Drake London being a bad value because according to his consensus ADP, he's like the 14th player off the board, often going like at the very beginning of round 2, even sometimes at the end of round 1. And I don't like that value at all, but if you're getting him in round 3, I think that's totally okay. He's a guy that obviously has a ton of upside. He's a talented player. It's just we need things to break right for him in that offense. But I think Drake London's going to be good this season. I just don't think he's worth a late first, early second round pick. James Cook in round 3, that's an awesome value. I've talked a lot about how I think James Cook could end up being one of the steals of the draft this season. He's a guy that I really do expect to put up top 10 numbers at the running back position. I genuinely think top 5 numbers are in his range of outcomes here, and I know it sounds crazy, but I think he could even be a top 3 running back this season. So I kind of expect myself to end up with a lot of James Cook this season. He's someone that I'm super excited about and someone that I really do think has a big opportunity here to do a lot this season. Then we saw the 49ers go back-to-back, Debo and Ayuk. Interesting to see what happens there. There's a lot of rumors circulating both of those guys being potentially traded here after the post-June 1st. Obviously, just the different cap implications of trading a player after June 1st. So it's reasonable to assume we're going to see some players get traded here in the next several weeks. So we'll see what happens there. But I think both those guys are perfectly fine picks late in the third. So coming up to us here, I know that Josh Jacobs is there. I don't think we're going to look at the running back position here. It was a big bummer to see Marvin Harrison go. That made me a little sad. But it's going to be tough here because we're looking at wide receivers. If we just look at the wide receiver position here, I'm not a big fan of Stephon Diggs this season. I think Nico Collins is a perfectly fine pick here, so I like that. And then my next highest ranked receiver is probably looking at Malik Neighbors. So we could go that route. We could go Collins and Neighbors. That's obviously a little bit scary. It's always tempting to just take a quarterback as well. A quarterback here at the end of round 3, I think, is a really solid option. I think that's actually kind of what I'm leaning towards. I think I'm pretty strongly considering going Josh Allen here at the end of round 3, and then we're going to take our highest ranked wide receiver, and that's going to be Nico Collins. So wide receiver is going to be a little bit weak for this roster, but we're going to have probably the best running back room in the league, and we've got obviously the quarterback one off the board. So I'd be super excited about this start. Obviously, we need to hit on a couple of the receivers later, but this is definitely a good start here. It's not something that I'd be sad about at all. Moving on here, we're seeing we saw Diggs, Lamar, Jacobs, and Walker go after me. I think Kenneth Walker at the beginning of round 4 is a little bit early. I'd prefer to be taking him in like round 5, round 6. Lamar ahead of Jalen Hurts is certainly interesting. I don't necessarily hate it, but it's not what I would do. Getting Josh Jacobs around 4, though, whoever got that, that's a really great pick. He's certainly going to be a really great value and someone that I do expect big things for this season. Obviously, it's a pretty wide range of outcomes there. I don't know how good Josh Jacobs is, but I really think that Packers offense is going to be absolutely awesome. And now we're already back to the end of round 4 almost here, and we're still looking at Jalen Hurts on the board. He's going to be a great value here. We saw Mahomes and Lamar go ahead of him. So if you're getting Jalen Hurts at the quarterback 4 off the board, that's going to be a massive value. He's my quarterback 2. I think it's right pretty much where he needs to be. He's certainly going to be an awesome player again this season, and I'm not worried at all about potential regression in the touchdown department because of Jason Kelce retiring. He's going to be a great player. He's going to be super consistent. So Hurts is a great pick for sure. I think he's probably going to be even better this season than he was last season. And wow, that's crazy. We just saw Anthony Richardson go ahead of Jalen Hurts. I don't hate it, I guess, but I really do think that Jalen Hurts is just going to be the quarterback 2 again this season. Obviously, there's a lot of guys that can push for that, but Taking Anthony Richardson ahead of him just seems a little bit presumptuous here. But that's fun. So we're seeing a lot of variation here. James Conner at the end of round 4. That's a little bit earlier than I'd like to be doing it. It's interesting to see where his ADP is here because that's way higher than where it is on a consensus basis. But I do think James Conner is an extremely talented player, but I also think Trey Benson's a good player, and I think they want to use him. I don't think we're going to see James Conner in a workhorse role like we saw last season. So I expect slightly decreased numbers here for James Conner this season. They'll probably try and keep him healthy, and Trey Benson's going to be involved. So I'm not as excited about Conner, and of course we know he's going to miss time just because that's what he does every single season. Jalen Hurts at the beginning of round 5. That is some insane value. That's a really great pick, whoever got him there. I'm kind of eyeing Malik Neighbors right now. I would love for him to fall to us. It's not something I'm necessarily expecting, but if we can get Neighbors or Waddle here in round 5, that'd be super awesome. So every pick that isn't one of them is going to be fantastic here. After that, wide receiver position takes a pretty big dip. I'm pretty excited about Tank Dell, of course. I think he's going to be awesome. I think George Pickens and Deontay are great picks as well. A lot of receivers late that I'm excited about, like Jaden Reed is someone that I love quite a bit. Lad McConkey, he's a great sleeper. Obviously, I'm not looking to take him in round 5, but I think I'm going to have a lot of him this season. Beyond that, I think Keon Coleman's a really interesting prospect, although I think Curtis Samuel's in line for a big workload. I like Jameson Williams late. Shaheed is fun. So a lot of receivers we can be targeting late, but I'd ideally love to have a top guy. If I can get Malik Neighbors here with this next pick, I'll feel super great about my roster right now. So we got to hold on for 2 more picks here. Not necessarily expecting it to work out, but we'll see what happens there. At least nobody's on auto picks. We're not going to lose out for sure here. Sort of the nice thing, it's nice and not nice, but when you're picking at the end, you really don't want, if there's no point in playing the ADP game at all, because like you got to just take the best player available because the 22 picks in between your picks is way too much time to be waiting for somebody to fall to you. So it really is just all about taking the next best player, and we got super lucky here. I was legitimately considering Neighbors with my last pick. So we got Neighbors here. That's awesome. I think he's going to be a top 15 wide receiver, and then I think it's pretty easy again, and we're going to go Tank Dell. We could look at the tight end position. I love Kincaid and Njoku this season. We're probably not going to get either of those guys here, and that's tough, but passing up on Tank Dell is just too tough here. I'm going to have to do it. So now I feel really good about our roster. We've got Allen at quarterback, we've got Gibbs and Taylor at running back, and then we've got Collins, Neighbors, and Tank Dell. I know it's a little bit scary going Tank Dell and Nico Collins, but I'm pretty convinced here that this Texans offense is going to be fantastic, and I'm not really a huge believer in Stephon Diggs this season, so I don't mind taking 2 receivers there. Obviously, it does lower the ceiling a little bit of your roster. It's not necessarily something I would recommend targeting to do, but I don't think you need to be afraid of it either. There weren't any receivers that were close enough to justify me taking a different one. So I would do that again there, but obviously I agree it's a little bit suboptimal. So we've seen Kincaid and Njoku go since then, so we're probably looking at sort of just kicking the can down the road on the tight end position. If Ferguson ended up being there on our next pick, I'd be interested. Same with Kyle Pitts, but after that, we're probably just going to wait. A lot of tight ends that you can get late that I'm pretty excited about. Like I think Pat Fryermuth's got a shot at having a pretty good season here. Taysom Hill sounds like he's going to be more involved again this season. I think there's a lot of opportunity here for a lot of guys. Isaiah Likely is a decent late round dart throw. Who knows which Packers tight end is going to end up being useful, but I think Musgrave's got a good shot. Plenty of sort of deep league or later pick start throws to take at the tight end position, and we can see what happens there. So not too afraid about that. Beyond that here, though, we're looking at really just sort of starting to sort of beef up our bench here. We're probably not going to take another quarterback because we took Allen. If he gets hurt, we're kind of screwed anyway. So we're probably just looking at the flex positions here. Getting Najee Harris here would be really awesome. I've got pretty high expectations for Najee this season. I also like Deontay Johnson quite a bit, so if those could be my next 2 picks, I wouldn't mind that at all. I think those are going to be some really awesome values this season. Beyond that, though, taking a look at other guys, I think Zach Moss is a really great value this season. One of the things I'm really trying to remind myself to do this season is just to target ambiguous backfields on offenses that we know are going to be really good. I keep referencing the Dolphins from last season. All of the running backs in Miami were drafted after round 10 just because nobody knew which of those 3 running backs was going to be the best between H and Jeff Wilson or Raheem Mostert, and It was just a huge missed opportunity for people who didn't take them earlier. Obviously, Mostert finished as a top 3 running back. Devon Achane was fantastic as well. There's way too much value in potentially landing a top tier running back on a really good offense. So if you can get a guy like Zach Moss, I think Zach Moss is just as good as Joe Mixon at this point in their careers, and Joe Mixon was a top 5 running back last season. So I think there's plenty of opportunity for Zach Moss to be awesome. I'm not necessarily considering him with this next pick, but if you were to make it to me one more round, I would certainly look there. Uh, Definitely got to point out Raheem Mostert being drafted at pick 111 on ESPN right now. That is just extremely late. He should be a top 5 round pick in my opinion. He's a guy that I honestly expect to be drafted or to perform just as well as Devon Achane this season. Obviously, injury is a concern, but it's a concern with both those guys. I don't see any reason in like being super afraid of that. But we got pretty lucky here actually. Um, Obviously, we did miss out on Najee Harris, but we're going to get Deontay Johnson here. That's awesome. He's a receiver that I really do expect great things from. And then I want to add one more running back here. Looking at the running backs, my highest ranked running back, and I'm not going to risk it because we're at the point in the draft where I don't want to be waiting and miss out on a guy just because there's not enough value here for me to justify it. Raheem Mostert's going to be awesome. He's probably going to be a top 15 running back again, and getting him in round 8 is just way too good of value. So definitely excited about that. That's definitely a really good start. We've got Mostert on our bench and Deontay Johnson on our bench to go along with Josh Allen. This is a really great roster, and I'd be super excited about this for sure. After that, though, looking at some other guys I'm going to target, I'll sort of just start queuing guys that I expect to have big seasons and that I like quite a bit. Jaden Reed, someone that I love for sure. Zach Moss is certainly someone I'm targeting. I think Kyle Pitts is worth the dart throw if you do have to wait at the tight end position. Ladd McConkey is one of my favorite values right now. Keon Coleman's interesting, as is Curtis Samuel. I like Jameson Williams quite a bit as well. I didn't mean to cue Xavier Legette. Not really interested in him. Obviously, Nick Chubb, can't ignore him by any means. Devin Singletary is another player that I expect big things from. Not necessarily big things from because I don't think that offense is going to be great, but Singletary is going to have a great workload there. I also think Gus Edwards is just a little bit underdrafted. He's a guy that could easily score 10 touchdowns again. He's certainly interesting. Pat Freiermuth is one of my favorite sleepers at the tight end position for sure. Someone who's just being drafted way too late. I'm not even seeing him right now. I don't even know what his ADP. There it is. Rico Dowdle being drafted at pick 182. He's just a way better player than Ezekiel Elliott, and he's going to be a potential part-time, even a potential starting running back on a good offense. And I think he's just a much better player than Zeke at this point in their careers. At many times last season, he looked better than Tony Pollard. He's definitely better on the goal line than Pollard was, and there's certainly an opportunity here with his age that Zeke just breaks down. I think that there's definitely a lot of opportunity for sure for a guy like Rico Dowdle to come in and be super meaningful. Blake Corum is another guy I'm super interested in. I understand that he's probably going to be the backup to Kyren Williams, but he's a good player, and Kyren Williams keeps missing time, so I think there's a lot of value there. Other guys I'd be looking at, Marshawn Lloyd, he's a really interesting player, 3rd-round draft pick for the Green Bay Packers. If Josh Jacobs misses time or just isn't good, Marshawn Lloyd's certainly somebody that they like and could be involved for sure. Another player that I'd be looking at, and he's probably, I'm surprised I haven't seen him yet. I probably passed him. But Trey Benson is another player that I'm super interested in. He's a guy that I think is actually going to be pretty involved for the Arizona Cardinals, and he's someone that I actually think is a good player. So I think he's there he is. Definitely someone worth targeting. So still, though, let's take a look at what we're looking at. We're up in 5 picks. If Kyle Pitts is still available, I'm definitely going to take him just to give us that upside shot, give us a legitimate shot at a top-tier tight end, because I think he's the last guy left that could do that for us. So we'll see if we get lucky there. After that, we'll probably just look at taking our next highest ranked players. I've talked a lot again about how I do think that Ladd McConkey is going to be one of the best values at the wide receiver position. I will certainly be targeting him if he's available. So if we get lucky here, we get to go Kyle Pitts, Ladd McConkey at this spot. That's going to be awesome. But even if I don't get McConkey, I think I'd be super happy with Samuel or Jameson Williams. So pretty happy about how this is shaking out regardless here. Let's see, are we going to make it 5 more seconds without Kyle Pitts getting taken? And we did. We got super lucky. They took TJ Hawkinson. Hawkinson's interesting just because I think that he's obviously a really good player, but he's going to be coming off a pretty significant injury. I don't expect him to be ready until probably week 8. So I'd be super concerned about that, but maybe he comes back and it's just awesome for the second half of the season. But I don't really see that happening because of the downgrade at the quarterback position for them. So I'm kind of out on TJ Hawkinson this season, but I totally get just taking a shot there for sure. Super happy about how this roster shake it out here. Obviously, the potential weak spot's going to be Kyle Pitts at the tight end position. We don't know how he's going to be. He's obviously got a shot to be a breakout this season. I'll probably highlight him in my breakout tight end videos as well. It's just somebody that I think has a good shot to do it, and somebody that I really do kind of think it's going to happen this season. I know it's tough to say that because he's definitely someone we've been waiting for to do it for several years now, but we saw him have a really awesome rookie season. He's still only 24 years old. Uh, that's super young for the tight end position in the NFL. If you want just a bit of a fun fact, Travis Kelce didn't have a reception in the NFL until he was 25. So let's not write off tight ends that are 24 years old and came into the NFL as like the best prospects we've ever seen at the tight end position. So I think it's silly to write him off. He's also finally got a quarterback upgrade here. I think Kyle Pitts could easily find his way into being a top five tight end, and really if you told me he finished as the tight end one this season, I wouldn't call you crazy. It's certainly possible. It's in the range of outcomes for him, and it's not really a possibility for any of the tight ends being drafted around him. So he's definitely someone that we should take a look at. If you miss out on those top tier guys, I think it makes a lot of sense just to take him. And then if things don't work out, at the worst case, you're streaming the tight end position, and that's just fine. So now we're just going to look to sort of round out our roster here. We want to get four more players on our bench. I'm open to drafting a second tight end because we did take Kyle Pitts, someone that I'm not necessarily super confident in. So if we could get Patrick Fryermuth, I'd be super. Um, is it Patrick? I think it's just Pat Fryermuth. If we could get Fryermuth here, I think I'd be pretty happy with that, just sort of giving us a little bit of an extra cushion at the tight end position. Other than that, though, players that I'm excited about, I like Curtis Samuel quite a bit. I think he's going to be a really safe pick at the wide receiver position. But because we already have guys like Deontay and McConkey, guys that are going to be PPR machines, guys that I think are safer draft picks, I'm not really going to target taking another one of those guys in Curtis Samuel. I'd rather target Jameson Williams, someone who I think has a lot more upside. Again, I know I'm double dipping here on the Lions because I already have Gibbs, but especially with a player that I'm not leaning on, like Jameson Williams, I think it's more than okay to take him and just see what happens with the upside there. So I think what I'm going to be leaning towards here is probably taking Pat Fryermuth and Jameson Williams, although it's tough because I really do like Blake Corum along with Trey Benson, and the running back position gets thin super quick once we get past those two, and I think there's going to be plenty of other wide receivers I like. Still other tight ends I like too. I don't think I need to take Fryermuth, so I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take Blake Corum, and then I'm going to take Jameson Williams. So we got ourselves a little bit more upside there. Blake Corum, I think the upside case is just pretty obvious here. We could obviously see Kyron Williams miss quite a bit of time. He's already dealing with a foot injury, and Blake Corum and him have a really similar skill set as well. We saw Blake Corum score 27 times last season in college as well. He's certainly a player that can get in the end zone, and there's an opportunity there for him to potentially just take the goal line role from Kyron. I'm not projecting that at all. I still think Kyron's going to be a top 10 running back, but it's certainly in the range of outcomes there. And I think it's also very reasonable to assume that Kyron's going to miss time at some point. So Blake Corum's a really great player to pick. And I think if you end up with Kyron, I would just definitely target having Corum. I get that it lowers your ceiling a little bit, but there's some players where I think it just makes way too much sense to own the handcuff. And having Kyron and Corum, I think, is certainly going to be something that I would recommend this season. I wouldn't want Kyron without really trying to make sure I get Corum later. But yeah, beyond that here, we're looking at two more picks. We're probably looking to grab maybe a tight end if Fryermuth stays on the board. Otherwise, I'll probably just roll with Kyle Pitts and call it good there. And then after that, we're looking at just trying to get one more upside shot. I certainly think that Trey Benson's a really great value here. He's someone that we could certainly be targeting. I've talked about Rico Dowdle as someone that's worth taking a look at. Um, Marvin Mims is maybe a little bit interesting as a year two breakout, but he's not someone that I'm going to target. Roschon Johnson is someone that's relatively interesting as well. I know that the Chicago Bears did give DeAndre Swift a pretty big contract pretty immediately in free agency here, but Roschon Johnson's a good player. I think it's going to be more of a two running back backfield than what they're leading on. Even I think Khalil Herbert will probably see the field a little bit as well. So I think you could see a situation where Roschon Johnson just earns himself enough touches to be somewhat fantasy relevant. Other than that, though, nobody that I'm super in love with there. Let's see though, who else? So we did see Pat Fryermuth go off the board. That's a bummer. So with our last two picks, yeah, we're not going to take a tight end here. We're just going to look at taking a receiver and a running back probably. I think we're probably, if things stand out or stay put, I'll probably be looking at just going Curtis Samuel and then going Marshawn Lloyd, trying to get one more upside shot at the running back position. It just makes a lot of sense to target, again, ambiguous backfields on really good offenses. I don't think it's necessarily fair to call the Packers an ambiguous backfield because we know that obviously Josh Jacobs is going to get the first shot at it, but uh, we don't know how good Josh Jacobs is at this point in his career, and Marshawn Lloyd is somebody that I do think is going to end up being good. So Marshawn Lloyd is going to be the pick here, and then I'll probably take Rashid Shaheed as a player that I really do like and think could easily potentially break out the season in like year two with Derek Carr. So that'll do it. I won't make you guys sit through and wait 24 more picks for the defense and kicker. So really do like this team. I think it was a really good start, starting with Gibbs and Taylor, and then sort of building out around them and just targeting wide receivers for a little bit. Overall, I'd probably give this team like an A minus. Obviously, Kyle Pitts is going to be the big question mark on this roster, along with the fact that we do have two Texan wide receivers that we're really leaning on pretty heavily here. So tough to see how that really shakes out. But we've got a lot of good receivers on the bench that I'd feel pretty confident in as well. So just to sort of summarize, we've got Josh Allen at quarterback. At the running back position, we've got Jameer Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor, along with along with Raheem Mostert, Blake Corum, and Marshawn Lloyd on our bench. And then at the wide receiver position, we've got Nico Collins, Malik Davis, Tank Dell, and then on our bench, we've got Deontay Johnson, Lag McConkey, Jamison Williams, and Rashid Shaheed. So, and beyond that, we've got Kyle Pitts at tight end. So, pretty happy with the roster. If you guys have any grades or whatever you want to give, if you got any thoughts on the team, let me know in the comments. It's always fun sort of seeing what you guys think, and it's a lot of fun doing these. I'll keep doing some mock drafts over the course of the off season and try to mix up where we're picking from, what format, and what even platform we do it on as well. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. There'll be a lot more videos going forward, and just gonna be a lot of fun the rest of the off season. So thanks for watching, guys. If you guys haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. There'll be more content coming forward, and we're just like 10 subscribers away from that goal of 1,000 that I've had forever. So it'd be super cool to get there. If you want to help me out there, that'd be super cool. So thanks, guys, so much, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.